episode of Next Man Up. We are coming to you from Loserville because we are all a bunch of losers this week. We are all down in the dumps. Johnny's not with us this week, but he too is coming to you from Loserville. He's just dealing with it on his own, and he was actually in New Orleans to witness the Bears fall to the Saints. But, I don't know how much down in the dumps we're all feeling. I was riding a little high going into the week thinking, oh, the Jets are in prime time. Maybe we'll see something based on the last time they were in prime time or the last couple times they were in prime time. But, we all know how that went down. Let's, before we get into it, we are halfway through the NFL season. I don't want to talk too much about how our teams performed this last week. Specifically, we can work it into our mid-year reports on how we think our teams are at compared to what we thought we'd be looking at. But, just looking at the state of affairs with our teams, I think we all have very similar areas of gripes with our teams with a certain position, I could say. Let's just say, with where our teams are at right now, Tony, give it to me straight. The Giants, you were coming into this season, coming off of a playoff appearance, not just a playoff appearance, a playoff win in the wild card game. And Daniel Jones got a contract, came back off an injury this week, and now is out for the rest of the season on that first year of that contract. So, I know we say, midway through the season, we've been talking a lot about Giants injuries, how they've been dealing with them. This is just, I feel like, the cherry on top for the team. What do you have to say about the Giants halfway through the season and Daniel Jones more specifically, and really what it looks like moving forward, considering they might be in talks of that, even a top 3 pick looking at the next season potentially?
Well, I think a lot of Giants fans are feeling right now the tank is on, and that's like a night and day shocking philosophy to be feeling after last year. But in terms of the injuries, I think I've griped about how they've mishandled a lot of them. I think the biggest one they mishandled is obviously Graham Gano. He had a kicker that needed knee surgery, and yet he played basically the first half of the season. And ultimately, that cost you, in theory, a couple wins. But I think the Giants got humbled by some tougher competition. I still think even if you look at last year to this year, they're not in the same category as Philadelphia or Dallas, and ultimately that was the goal from this last season to next season, was to compete more with them, and it's just not that. We're not even in the same category. In regards to the Jones ACL injury, it hurts. It really hurts to see such a good, and you could talk all you want about if he's good, bad, whatever. He's a good person, and just to see something like that
You
happen,
really can't say anything bad about him as a person at all.
no,
He does
and he's
everything
been
right. You've said he's the kind of guy that you want your daughter bringing home to you if you have a daughter. Like,
exactly.
he composes himself well. He has a good, air about him as a person. You never wish ill on anybody like that. Performance on the
No,
field here and there, you could criticize, but him as a person, that aside.
Well, and
and
Jones too, I think, is one of the, he's like how I would say Derek Jeter was when he played. He was a guy who he kept his mouth shut. He didn't cause any trouble off field or even on field, and he does it for the love. You can tell he does it for the love of the game, and he's just trying to be that stand up guy that everyone can look up to.
And I think he was a great shadow to Eli in personality. I mean, we're all talking about personality right now. So I think he was a great shadow to Eli in that regard. I think the New York Football Giants sort of have a brand that they wish to adhere to. And I think that Jones and Eli basically specifically represent that brand the exact way that they hope to. Um, I just wonder if he came back sooner than he was at least mentally prepared. I mean, obviously, we saw what happened with DeVito. DeVito's a lamb for slaughter right now. I feel bad for him. He's not ready for this situation. It's overwhelming for a young player to be thrown into the fire like that when you're on third string. Terod is on injured reserve, so he's out at least 3 more weeks. So it made you wonder, maybe Jones came back before he was ready. Obviously, he's had the neck injury. He's had concussions. He's had the knee. I think ultimately when you have 3 different offensive coordinators, all these different game plans and 4 or 5 years of playing with a team, and all these hits you're taking, you could really point the finger at the Giants for ruining him more than you can at him for ruining the Giants. And I will stand by that. And I will stand by the contract because you got to pay your quarterback, and he won a playoff game, and that to me is what he was. we live in a world where Geno Smith makes $35 million a year. And once I saw that, I was like, of course Jones will make 40. I mean, I don't want to argue who's better, but like he's in that mid frame for the league, and that should be like what he gets. So now they'll get some money back on insurance. But the reality is Jones will not be ready for OTAs. He will not be ready for training camp. I doubt he's swimming with dolphins like Aaron Rodgers and doing what he needs to do to magically heal himself and probably come back too soon. But we're going to be looking at who the heck is lining up under center for us next year, because Terod will hit free agency. DeVito is definitely not even he's probably not ideally a short-term answer. We don't want to think of him as a long-term answer. So I think they're looking at a signing a veteran and drafting a rookie going into next year in terms of quarterback. So night and day comparison. I just hope that we can find players that don't just go out there and mail it in. I hope they just go out there and show that they want to be a part of the Giants in the future.
And the Giants before the game last week, the Giants brass, as they like to call them, we're out at the USC Washington game getting a firsthand look at, Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr. Do you see them possibly going that route if they're sitting up there in like that top 3, top 5 sort of range?
Well, I don't believe in losing on purpose. I mean, I think when people say tanking, it's really just a way of
I'm not saying they're going to lose on purpose. I'm just saying,
yeah. Well, the only way they're getting
if you're trotting Tommy DeVito out there, you might not lose on purpose. You might not have any choice, but you wind up losing because Tommy DeVito is the one under center.
All right. So in that scenario, let's say hypothetically they lose out, they finish 2-14, 2-15, whatever, and then they end up having the number 1 pick. It's crazy how so many of us on this show will probably be we're definitely going to have to do a big draft show because everybody is going to be in, top 5, top 10. Johnny and the Bears obviously have the Panthers pick, but I get nervous. And yes, I do think they should take a quarterback, but the good news is there's probably going to be a lot of them to choose from. And I just genuinely hope that they don't do anything outside the box. I'm enticed by Sanders. I think you could get him later. I don't think you necessarily have to get him top 10. I think the presence of his father is astronomically important. Caleb Williams, I tend to get nervous about definite number 1 picks for those like 2
generational
years.
Talents.
I mean, sometimes you get a Trevor Lawrence, and then you're great. But other times you get a Jameis Winston or a Baker Mayfield, who are decent players, but not worth a number 1 overall pick, and will hold your franchise back. Neither of them are on the franchise they were drafted by.
They also, Marcus Russell.
They also very well could just say we are committed to Daniel Jones. Then they trade down a couple picks, maybe get
Daniel
like a
Jones
Marvin.
Is on the team next year, no matter what.
They could wind up building around and getting a Marvin Harrison Jr. even, or someone like that to build up the wide receiver core or build up that offensive line that's been like Swiss cheese.
Or get a pass rusher besides Thibodeau that can actually. I mean, Ojulari cannot stay on the field. Get another pass rusher. There's a lot of things they need.
There's a lot of time till April. There's a lot of developments that could happen. There's obviously the Saquon Barkley.
Again.
Saquon Barkley drama that's going to be that cloud that's going to be hanging over the organization the second that week 18 finishes up. But, looking at the team, moving forward, what do you want to see out of this team down the stretch before?
Well, I'd like to not lose 40-0 to Dallas this week, but, I'll settle for some points on the board, to tell you the truth. I don't want to see Saquon further hurt himself. I don't want to see him make more sacrifices for a team, taking 41 carries into a brick wall over and over. But I also don't want to see the guys that got paid mail it in. The Giants have had problems with their captains this year. They haven't had the vocal leadership that they need. Dexter Lawrence, Xavier McKinney sounding off this week after an embarrassing loss. It's not good. It's not good. Dex obviously got the bag this year. I have nothing against Dex, but I want to see more leadership. I want to see who are our leaders going forward. And if we can be competitive, that would be great. That's really all I'm hoping for.
Some leadership, some accountability kind of have to be shared around the locker room. And, from one Jones to another, Nikki, Mac Jones, I feel like we every week is kind of a different story with Mac Jones, and won't he be the guy next year, or what's going on in New England. But, there's reports this week of, Mike Vrabel is apparently the number 1 choice to, take over in New England if Belichick is gone. Is there water? Does that ship hold water, or do you think that's just a fluff piece that someone wrote, or do you think that Belichick is out? Do you know what do you think? What are you hearing up in New England up there?
I think, well, first of all, as you see this week, it's appropriate. I have Sad Mac Jones as my background. It's pretty much this is
We need an
what
apology
all.
form for your apology form.
No apology form for that. I think this is just it's a perfect representation of all New England fans this season. Just kind of
Is that kind of
we.
what you look like on your couch watching these games
I
now?
mean, at the end of it, yes, because I'm so exhausted from freaking out and venting all of my various frustrations. But luckily, I had my 1.5-year-old niece over to distract the game on Sunday, so that was a very nice distraction away
Aw.
from the terror that this was. But I mean, the Vrabel story, it's I think it's just people throwing names out. Vrabel so far, I think, is the most successful coach to come out of former Belichick players as far as head coaching goes. And he's done a good job with the Titans for sure. Obviously, this year is a whole different story than the past couple of seasons. But also there's a lot of interest internally in Gerard Mayo becoming the head coach one day. I mean, they gave him a bunch of money and bumped up his role as an official assistant head coach, and he's more of assistant head coach, I think, than Joe Judge is, where Joe Judge is listed as an assistant head coach, but he's much more back to the focus on being a special teams guy, which is his thing, and a guy who's proved that he's a much better coordinator for a certain position than he is an actual head coach. As Tony, I know you remember him from being there on the Giants
Yep.
for a cup of coffee. And we could say the same thing for Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels twice now has proven terrible head coach, very good coordinator. Is he coming back to the Patriots? I don't know. Maybe
Was he a good coordinator, or was Tom Brady just Tom Brady?
I mean, both, yes.
Nikki, did you
But
see the story with Antonio Pierce and McDaniels? I'm curious.
yeah, I did see that.
It just
Where
sounded really insecure to me.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I mean, the
I
07
said
Giants are still haunting this guy. I had to bring it up.
yeah. I mean, I said in our group text, like it's still a haunting memory for New England fans to this day, and probably will be for the rest of time. But I mean
Got lots
that.
of good memories too. Lots of good ones.
Oh yeah,
But,
lots,
yeah.
but just that one big one in the end. We
Oh
don't
yeah.
talk about that. Anyways,
Well,
but yeah, I think that was a little bit of a childish reaction to what Pierce said, and I get why Pierce
of
mentioned that.
course. He's
It's
saying
just
like
as a
you can never
motivating factor.
exactly.
Big underdog thing. Let's go in there. Let's not a lot of people expect out of us. Let's go in there and
Don't ever
prove them
expect to
wrong.
lose is literally all he was saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, you got to do stuff like that. And yeah, sure. The guy who's your head coach at the time was a member of that coaching staff in 2007. So yeah, sure. He's going to still have some of those feelings left over. But the way that he said it, it was just,
Petty.
I don't think about that.
But kind of get over yourself, dude.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, back to the Patriots, I think with this season, they just got to try something. I'm not expecting a playoff appearance, but at least put together a solid game plan that can be consistent for if it can be consistent for the rest of the season, great. If it can be consistent for a few weeks in a row, I'm fine with that. Just show me some signs where you have guys that can step up and execute the game plan how you're trying to execute it, and maybe surprise some people a little bit along the way. Do some stuff that they're okay. There's some sort of hope for the future, because that's what I think we're looking for now, is just how the future of this team is going to be.
My 2 cents, Nikki, is you guys just need a younger GM. You could keep Bill as the head coach. I was talking to a Patriots fan the other day, and I was like, so what's gonna happen with Bill here? And she was like, oh, well, it's not his fault. They have no wide receivers. And I'm like, that is his fault because he picks the wide receivers. So how about you get some newer, younger GM in the building and just let Bill continue to do what he does, which is great deep. I mean, Bill can beat anybody at any time still, I believe.
And I said it before on the show, I would be fine if they replaced him as GM. I'd keep him as the head coach. Take that drafting aspect, the transactional stuff off his plate, give him a little more headspace as far as coaching goes. He can still be a consultant to the GM, obviously, and
Right.
here's what I want and the plans and all that. But we got to do something here. And
He's been too cheap with receivers for too long.
Yeah,
That's
and
what
the
needs to
best one
change.
that he drafted was Deion Branch, 20 plus years ago. And even I know you mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. earlier. If the Patriots finish as
Ooh.
a top 5 pick, realistically, I don't see Marvin Harrison Jr. falling out of the top 5, maybe even the top 3. So if we have a chance to possibly get someone like that, I'd be
Game
fine with
changer.
that. And he terrorized the Patriots defense when his dad terrorized the defense.
Deion Branch may have been the best receiver that he drafted, yet he never had a 1,000-yard receiving year with the
No, but
Patriots.
he's co-Super Bowl MVP with Tom Brady.
Yes.
He's got that. So I mean,
Obviously he found some good ones like Wes Welker, and they traded for Moss. But we're going deep into the vault. But recently the signings like Juju Smith-Schuster,
You signed
what a
Juju
horrible
Smith-Schuster for
deal.
the same deal that Jacoby Myers gets in Vegas, and who's been better this year? Jacoby
Yeah,
Myers has turned into a
it's
pseudo
absolutely been Jacoby Myers.
WR1 in Vegas. So I mean, you look at the guys they let go versus the guys they bring in. Who's having more production? Granted, in Vegas, yes, Devontae Adams gets more attention. So sure, it's going to open up more opportunities for Jacoby Myers. But he's, even when Juju gets his looks, what's he really doing? He's not doing anything. He's got like stone hands out there, and he's also not getting the separation he should be getting because he's been a number one receiver in the past. He's not showing that he has that potential
Good
anymore.
news, Nikki, you still get to play the Giants, and they're not going to have a quarterback.
we
and
got
you still get to
ourselves a
play
week
the
12.
Jets, who you always beat. So you got
ourselves a week 12
wins.
headache that's just going to cause so much face palming for both of us. So
as Tony said, you do still have one more game against the Jets, which is going to be week 18. The Patriots have had the Jets number for the last, I don't know, 10 years since that overtime
decade
wonder.
or two.
Probably. And let me talk to the Jets because I feel like we're transitioning to that soon. Lucio, let me pick your brain on this. Do you actually think that Aaron Rodgers is realistically going to be back at the end of this season, or do you think he's just blowing smoke?
All right. So I have been on this show a couple times saying I am not buying into that hype as much as everyone else. And I'm staying on that hill. I'm not buying into that hype as much as everyone else. Yes, the man says, I'll be back sooner rather than later. Sure, that's one thing or another. But if I am the Jets and you have this guy committed to next year already, he's committed to next year. Do you really want to risk losing him and having his career end by rushing back from an injury such as the Achilles just because you have the potential to be in the mix? They are wasting a Super Bowl championship caliber defense with the offense that they're running. They cannot score a touchdown to save their life at all right now. Their offense cannot get past and out of their own way. They can start a drive. They kill themselves with penalties, their discipline, their decisions, their play calling, you name it. You can point a finger every which direction. Yes, the easy thing is point at Zach Wilson. He's a bum. Right. He's stupid. The other easy decision is point at the OC. He's making poor decisions, which is also correct. There's a lot of blame to be going around. The offensive line, Tony, you see it every week with the Giants as well. We discuss it. It's like Swiss cheese. They get manhandled. You can't get anything going. There's no rhythm. There's no rhyme.
Consistency from tackle
there's
to tackle.
No rhythm.
Different group each week doesn't work.
Yeah, as I said, you can't feel the rhythm, can't feel the rhyme. It's not bobsled time. It's just really rough going there. You look at Billy Turner starting at right tackle and Max Mitchell starting at right guard. Max Mitchell has never played guard in his life. I don't know why you don't flip the two. Play Max Mitchell at right tackle. He's played right tackle before. Billy Turner has played guard before. So why don't you play the two of them at the position they're comfortable at? To hell if I know. Dwayne Brown.
And do you think Becton has been good enough? I thought he looked pretty bad against Kayvon.
Becton gets a bad rap because one or two plays will get shown up, but then there are other plays. I love watching Baldy's breakdowns because he loves breaking down the plays. Becton has some very good plays that fly under the radar because on a play where he's completely destroying Bosa on the left side, someone's manhandling Turner on the right side and getting to Wilson. So no one acknowledges the fact that Becton completely manhandled Bosa on the left side. So if he's taking care of his business on the left side, someone's getting through the right side. So it gets ignored the fact that he actually did his job on that play. It's like, oh, well, he sucks because someone got through the line. Well, actually, if you look, the best guy on the defensive line was nowhere near him because he was 5 yards off the play because he was getting taken back by Becton. So I think he does get a bad rap because the offensive line as a collective has been garbage. I've been saying for years, since Mangold and Ferguson were anchoring this line, they have not had a solid offensive line. So we're talking about 10 years they have not had a solid foundation on the offensive line.
I feel like a lot of teams have struggled to adjust to the newer era of rules and salary caps and contracts. Like we used to I remember the Giants had the same line for like a decade, tackle to tackle.
And so did the Jets. I mean, you look at the
That doesn't
09,
happen
the
anymore.
2009, 2010, 2011 season, you had out there from left to right. I could still name you who they had at every position.
Yeah.
You know, you
Now
had
listen though, go
the
ahead. Go ahead.
consistent line play from Ferguson, Mangold, Brandon Moore, Alan Faneca, and Damian Woody across the front. And that was consistent for year after year after year after year. And they had successful run games and success. You know, they had some
Let me
time
ask
in
you
the
a
pocket.
personal question. If we had a time machine and we could bring that offensive line to this Jets organization, are the problems solved? Because we know we have greatness and you have greatness in Garrett Wilson. Lazard, I still think that was a Rodgers request and they never should have made that deal. But you and I we kind of got argumentative a little bit last week regarding Zach Wilson, and I think ultimately you're right. You're tired of him getting the finger pointed to him, and he's put in a situation he wasn't even supposed to be in. And you could really say Joe Douglas should have had another guy. I mean, I guess Simeon came in later, but they probably should have thought that Rodgers is 40 years old. Who's the third guy in the quarterback room? So all that aside, if you give him that perfect offensive line, how much better is Zach Wilson in your mind?
I think that is he the answer long term? I still don't think he is the answer long term. But if you look at a game like Monday night where there is no time to make any decisions and he's getting him, he's got 2 seconds to throw the ball. Not that he's getting the ball out in 2 seconds because he's got his read down quick, but he's getting the ball out in 2 seconds because he has no other choice. I think that those plays get mitigated. I think there's less fumbles because he's not getting pressured as much. So I think that you can make up for inept quarterback play with a stout, solid offensive line and hide some of those problems because you can also get the run game going in rhythm by opening those holes because they weren't able to do that.
That's what they need to do.
You have a guy like Breece Hall who can bust a 60-yard run at any moment, but if you can't open a hole for the man to get at least 7 yards, then what are you doing? And then you put Dalvin Cook in there, who I'm done with Dalvin Cook. Get rid of Dalvin Cook. They should have traded him at the trade deadline. They should have gotten rid of him. I think it's a wasted experiment. Should have sent him to Baltimore or someone that was looking for some running back help and given Izzy Abataconda a chance to get some speed on the outside. I see Michael Carter getting more snaps than Dalvin Cook. So what the hell did you sign Dalvin Cook to his contract for? I wasn't a big fan of the signing in the first place. When they lost all their centers last week, I still don't know why Ben Jones is sitting at home. They were linked to Ben Jones in the preseason. Ben Jones is still a free agent. Why was Ben Jones not signed? They signed Roger Saffold. He was on the practice squad. He's still learning the playbook. Okay, that's someone to bolster the offensive line a little bit. Dwayne Brown is still not back. They need help on the offensive line. I do think that the offensive line is in the immediate need, biggest priority of what fixes the problems. Offensive line is number one because you fix the offensive line, which helps fix the run game, which has really stalled the last couple weeks. I really feel like since the Eagles game, Breece was good. Then after that, it hasn't really done much.
Well, that's because you guys are going to get the same treatment that the Giants. I mean, I think the Giants did what any team against playing the Jets is going to do the same thing the Giants did, which is just blitz the crap out of them. Because you could talk all you want about the offensive line. Another problem, and I'm not trying to just pile on Zach Wilson, is he's not reading blitz packages. So I think a lot of the time quarterbacks need to be able to know that, hey, they got more guys coming than we got blocking. You can't hold this ball.
No, his awareness has not been good either. His pressure awareness, his awareness of where guys are coming from has not been good. And as I was saying, his
Jones struggled that this year too.
They are forcing him to throw it like 50 times a game. They're not a team that's built to throw the ball 50 times a game. If you have Aaron Rodgers playing quarterback, sure, you could probably throw it 50 times a game because he's going to make those decisions much quicker and have a better awareness of what's going on around him. You shouldn't be running the Aaron Rodgers game plan with Zach Wilson. It doesn't work like that.
I wish you guys signed Heineke. He'd be perfect right now for you guys.
Yeah, because he actually knows how to run.
Well, also because he's just that underdog mentality, XFLer. Like he will come into any team anytime.
I think Wilson's biggest problem right now is he is very much in his own head of, I do not want to throw an interception, so I'm going to hold on to the ball for 2 extra seconds to try and not throw an interception, but then I'm going to wind up fumbling because I'm going to get sacked because I held the ball for too long.
I think the truth is the guy was already in the doghouse. Like, I mean, like even before you put him in week 1 this year, I think he had already been so jaded by such the hate and the animosity and just the overall struggle that it was just a nightmare scenario. And I will continue to put more of the blame on Douglas for not having somebody else in the quarterback room. So, you know, I would like to see Trevor Siemian. I would, just because what if he can help you get that run game going? That's what you need. You don't need a quarterback to go in there and throw for 300 yards.
I really wish they would have brought Mike White back, but you know, that's he's in Miami. He's with the rivals now. You know, they could have brought in like a Colt McCoy. I think Colt McCoy's still a free agent. They could have, you know, brought in Heineke. They could have brought in plenty of guys, but they didn't. They
could have done what the Rams just did and signed Carson Wentz.
Nah, I don't want Carson. I still don't want Carson Wentz. But you know, enough of misery quarterback talk. I think we've all kind of, you know, given our 2 cents. I mean, looking forward.
Just start calling this show the Tankathon if this keeps up.
Looking forwards with the Jets, you know, their defense, I said, can play with the best of them. The defense can keep them in games as long as the offense doesn't lose it for them. But the offense needs to score points. And if the offense doesn't score points, then what are you going to do? The defense held the Chargers to under 200 yards, and they still lost 27-6 because they let up like a scoop and score, and they let up a punt return for a touchdown. So what are you going to do? The defense let up 14 points as a whole as a defense. But there just wasn't enough because the offense was what they were and can't score the damn ball. But that being said, looking at the league as a whole, as I said, we are halfway through the season. If the season ended today and we wanted to give out some award, can we end the season today? Just end the misery. And we wanted to give out some awards. I mean, you know, obviously there's a lot can change before the end of the season. Some teams could fall, some teams could skyrocket to the top. Some teams are starting to hit their stride. Some teams could, as it could falter. Miami's looking like they could be one of those teams that falls down. The Chiefs are on the rise a little bit. Teams like the Lions are looking high.
Crazy
the AFC
right
is
now.
wide open, but if we're looking at, you know, an MVP halfway through the season, you know, who would you guys say the MVP is halfway through the season at this point? Is it still just a quarterback award, or do you think that it could finally
9 out of 10 times it's a quarterback award, and I'm probably premature in saying this, but I got Bengal fever right now, and I just feel like Joey Burrow is going to be in that discussion, especially by the end of the year. It's premature right now because he had a rough start at the beginning of the season, but Joe Cool is back, and that calf is not a problem anymore, at least from what I can tell, and he's got unfinished business, and that's how the Bengals are playing right now. So I like Burrow.
I got to back that up. It's funny. Earlier today, I saw something from NFL memes that says the 3 greatest quarterbacks of all time are Tom Brady, Joe Montana, and Joe Burrow after week 4. But yeah, I mean, Burrow's put together a solid season after those first couple of weeks, ironically, in coincidence with that meme. But I think his time's due too. I think he's got to get his flowers.
I really wanted to give Kirk Cousins an award this year, but you know, and he might have gotten it if he had stayed healthy.
If Cousins had stayed healthy, I would have said he was my front runner. But I'd say, if I want to be fun and move away from the quarterback, I want to say Christian McCaffrey. Without him, the Niners would not be really much of anything, I feel like, because he is what keeps that offense moving. I would love to see McCaffrey really in the discussion come down this end of the season. But looking at the rookies, you know, coming into the season, you got to think, oh, it's going to be one of those rookie quarterbacks. You know, Stroud's making his name known at the moment. But if you ask me, a guy like Puka Nacua comes out of nowhere, lights the world on fire. And if you ask me, it's his award to lose for Offensive Rookie of the Year halfway through the season. You know, he's lost a little bit of luster the last couple of weeks, especially with Stafford going down for a little bit.
Continues.
If Stroud continues his
just if the Rams continue to stink, that's really what it comes down. It's got nothing to do with Nacua.
If the Rams continue to go downhill with Stafford being out, I think that Nacua could easily lose it. But I mean, I think that it's between Stroud and Nakua. It's a 2-horse race right now.
And especially after this past week's performance that Stroud had, where he just 470 yards, 5 touchdowns.
Sitting on Anthony's fantasy bench, nonetheless.
All right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about
hey,
it.
I played
And
a guy who
you,
started him, so
okay. So first of all, if I started him, I still would have lost. So not that upset. But it's frustrating to leave 41 points on the bench. The previous week, I was licking my chops. Stroud against the Panthers, a rookie, number 1, number 2 overall pick. This is going to be a showing. And they both looked like the biggest rookies you'd ever see. So I thought, man, what am I supposed to do? And then another rookie, guy named Will Levis, 3 touchdowns to DeAndre Hopkins, and then a 4th in the game. I made a dumb mistake. I continue to get burned by Thursday Night Football. I really do, because
it's
I
all
thought
that mayonnaise in his coffee that's powering him. That's what it is.
I was drinking the Kool-Aid with mayonnaise in it. That's what happened.
You were drinking the mayonnaise coffee too.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? I was like, this kid can throw the ball, and he actually did play well. He just didn't do any touchdowns. It was all running back. So, too bad. But I think I'm at the point now where I'll just live or die with Stroud.
And
mostly die.
Defensive rookie, Christian Gonzalez going down definitely hurt his chances. He was definitely on route to it. But I think if you look at Witherspoon in Seattle might get it for their defensive back after losing out last year to Sauce. Obviously, they were a little bitter over there, but I think they might get it this year with Witherspoon. He's got, he had at least 1 pick six. Does he have 2 pick sixes? I remember
the one.
I know the kid's been balling out this year, but he's been playing absolute lights out in the secondary in Seattle this year.
He's perfect for Seattle. He's got a big mouth, loves to talk. You know what I mean?
But he backs it up.
That's what this is what they do. He's their brand. He's their next Sherman. So yes, absolutely, he can win that award, I think.
I'm gonna jump the gun with this too, because I know you said you had coach of the year midseason so far on the list. I'm going to throw in Doug Peterson for Jacksonville with what he's done in that. Like I said before, with what he did with that team last year, led them to the playoffs, turned them around from the garbage mire season.
I mean, he very well could have gotten it last year, if not
absolutely
what Brian Daboll did. But if you ask me, coach of the year at this point is Mr. Kneecap Eater himself, Dan Campbell.
That's my second.
You can't tell me that Dan Campbell in Detroit does not deserve coach of the year with what he's done in Detroit. He's taken Detroit from one of the laughing stocks in the league to one of the premier teams in the NFL.
His players love him, and his
players love him. They will run through a wall for. I will run through a wall for that man. And I'm not a Lions. I'm not a Lions fan. I am not a Detroit supporter. I am a Dan Campbell fan. And if that man says jump, I will say how high, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. I was like, okay, Dan Campbell said it, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
That man,
McDaniel's got to be in the conversation too with Miami. He does.
Yeah,
I know Miami's kind of fizzled as of late, but it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing with Detroit. Like, it depends where these teams finish.
Depends on where they finish.
Very much where it ends.
But considering where teams were, I'd say, expected to be compared to where they are, I think it's one of those awards. These awards are kind of like where teams are expected to be versus where they're. If you look at a team like Detroit, Miami, they were clicking until Tua got hurt last year. So, you were expecting Miami to do well. When Detroit started kicking in towards the end of the season last year, and they started off the season by beating the Chiefs, like, oh, Detroit came to play. Detroit, I think, is that team that really they're on the map now, and I do
had
really
high
like
expectations too, I'd argue. But go ahead.
But also, he's helped Jared Goff turn himself back into a solid quarterback, and with the options and the players that he has around him on that offense, it's allowed Goff to be comfortable in his own skin and be a confident leader for that team to go ahead and try and score as much as they can and then the defense in turn also helps the offense back up their production and try and help preserve that lead so Goff can have more opportunities.
And before we close out, mid-season AFC, NFC championship predictions. I know we did it coming into the season. We gave our predictions. How are you feeling about those predictions, and who do you see in those games now?
The sad thing is I don't even remember my predictions. That's how
I think I had the Jaguars in mind. So
you're sticking with the Jags there, Nicky?
I'm still sticking with Jags making the AFC championship, and I think I had Lions for NFC, so I think I'm still sticking with that one too.
All right.
I will Since I don't remember, I'm gonna go fresh. I think I'm gonna say Bengals, Dolphins, AFC, because I just think it'd be fun to see like those offenses go at it. I think Mike McDaniel, what he doesn't get enough credit for is the running backs. The way he gets those running backs involved is impressive.
A-Chain's supposed to coming back soon too.
Come on, man. I mean, it's a bunch of track stars on that team. It's fun to watch, but their defense might hold up. I don't know. NFC, I really, really, really hate to say this, but I think it's Eagles Cowboys, and I just think that those are the two best teams in the NFC.
I think that was my prediction preseason. Look at that.
Sorry, I didn't want to admit it then. But
if you ask me at this point, I think NFC. I'm going with Lions, Eagles. AFC, I think the Ravens are proving me right and are hitting that stride. I think it's going to be Ravens and Bengals in the AFC Championship. I think the Bengals are hitting that stride at the right time. As Nick said, Joe Burrow after week 4, gotta love it. But
your Jets are the only hope to make the playoffs. I mean, they're the
on
only ones
this
with
show,
a shot.
the Jets are the only one with a shot.
Yeah,
and it.
I want to see how they do against the Ravens.
I have not given up hope on the team or on Zach Wilson, but my faith is slowly fading, and the leash is getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
I think
as
there's a chance you see
pass.
Simeon this upcoming week. I'm not
I
saying
don't think
they'll
this
pull him
week
mid-game, but Wilson
Simeon
might just go,
has not been activated yet. He's only been on the practice squad since he signed. Tim Boyle has been on the active roster. I mean,
anyone. Joe Schmo, a new name needs to come in. That's all I'm saying.
Have Sauce Gardner play quarterback, for Christ's sakes, at this point.
Or Brees.
Look, so, I mean, for me, for this coming weekend too, it's just, I mean, obviously Patriots and Colts over in Germany. It'll be those weird early morning.
Have
Sunday
yourself a
games.
Frankfurter.
But it's something like that. But my main focus this weekend is these guys right here behind me, the Montreal.
How's my boy Austin Mack doing?
Austin Mack and the Alouettes are playing for the East Division title on Saturday against the defending Grey Cup champion Argonauts. So if they can win on Saturday, they go to Hamilton to take on the winner of the West final. So and compete for the Grey Cup. We'll see.
But that does it for here on Next Man Up. You can catch all of our shows on Down the Rabbit Hole Media, on everywhere you get your podcasts. So until next time, everyone, be well.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for your support of both Next Man Up and Down the Rabbit Hole Media. If you enjoyed this show and want to hear other shows or want to learn more about our content, please check out all of our links and information on dtrabbithole.com. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on Spotify. Thank you so much for your support. And if nothing else, just tell a friend. We really appreciate your time. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And as always, be well.